when the egg meets the whisk. If you do not weep now, you may never weep, because when you return, there will only be a cubicle and the nectarines on the hospital windowsill. Things slump, dirty themselves, become compound. Mold forms its spores on bread, and sheep get shaggier. Cherry blossom settles on cars like sunroofs. Jumpers bobble. You know all this. The look of meat minced or raw, or browning in the pan. The newborn baby's eyes like a poster of the Aegean. And how the iris tans, brindles, picks up its sunspots, spins color like roulette. And yet you always forget, like the sand from Petra where the jar flies from the shelf, forgetting its layers. Think of a children's sandpit after rain, seaweed of twigs, blown Costa cups, a capsized sock, the filthy abandoned homes of snails, a spade, and beyond the sand, the municipal grass, with its round fox turds and burrowed loose earth and pellets, and the hairy scallion clumps that follow bluebells. Think of the discretion of a bluebell. Think of municipal grass. Think of your back at 20, a map of nothing, a Pacific, and then the colonies of pain, the trigger points, the knotty sheaths of fascia you pay people to pound, the balkanization of the muscle groups. Think of the reality of breastfeeding, your fingers gleaming like crab claws under the tap, the breast pump drying on its rack, the lip valve missing, the full bottle tipping voluptuously into the carpet pile, the freezer with its little packs of frozen pastry, the baby alone in his basket, watching the shadows. And think of the pop like champagne, the first time you opened formula, the magnum bottle, the baby sick as a wedding guest, and then soft pillowed with his dummy on your breast. Think how suffering is, unanimated, the iron filings of the laughter lines unmagnetized, bleeding with the bruises. What Crayola! What an Ash Wednesday for a face! Think of your father's leather valet case, the navy dressing gown you used to put your nose in. You hadn't seen them since childhood, and there they were by the side of the bed to take home. The leather with its evenly polished grain, the dressing gown mended on the shoulder. Think of a children's sandpit after rain. This is the world and the entropy of things, the plugged dike and the sea coming in, the emendation and the introduced error, the floor before a toddler's pasta dinner, the smooth pool waiting for the novice diver, the girl's outfit for tomorrow and her mother's, the first I love you, and the others. So we remember the courage of street cleaners because of the hopelessness of their work, and house painters in seaside towns, and the charity of shift workers in hospital car parks, because they sit drinking tea and smoking and do not care for fining the dying. And the bonhomie of Manhattan psychics, squatting in their basements, lit like brothels. When the season refuses to turn, the women spend Thanksgiving alone. Everything is dry and dead and unclean, and love spits for information. So we remember our own teenage selves and their afterlives and the soft nectarines we didn't want to buy. And why? Because of the army veterans in the lift and morning sickness tight under the ribs, like someone trying on a vintage skirt. Because of the boy in open wove khaki with a face like a dollar store Halloween mask, who mobilized the muscles of his chin, the sinews of his neck, to approximate a smile, to be kind to us. As we remember our own good enough mother, because she was anxious about doing things wrong, and did things wrong, and loved us. Because she sang of buses, out of tune. Once they began, I was calmer. I enjoyed the gush of the knife and the sound of the scissors, the slop of my bowel being set to one side, the look on the surgeon's face, his attentiveness and shock. Can someone pass me the forceps, please? And then, almost too soon, he was looking away at the ascension of the enormous baby boy rising over the curtain into the neon ceiling, and the glowing plinth of green, twitching, hacked about. The fish thrashing on the hook that happened to it. Well, of course. Who wants to be born? And to be hauled out in a windowless room somewhere near Paddington to Radio 5 Live. To be born purple, your hair scrambled like eggs. I have never heard a person so incredulous with rage. And then they couldn't stop the bleeding. Everything was larger than they thought, they said. The baby, the placenta, the vessels, even the womb. So I lay on the table, hemorrhaging, and the alarm bell rang, and the consultant asked, what uterine tonics have been administered? Oxytocin, ergometrin. It sounded like a restaurant kitchen. Someone was washing up the fish knives, and my husband had a face in his hands. Grave despite the monkey hat, benignant, black-eyed, magnanimous. Late on summer Saturdays, this is what the verger sweeps. Ombre moons, pistachios, ash, hearts cut from upcycled maps, scalloped bits of Austen novels, hot pushed handfuls of white petals. This is what the broom releases. Acetate of camel lights, pheromones of human fear, public libraries' unwashed armpits, sweet sweat like a pound cake rising, modern roses' nothingness. This is how things mix together. Matter's endgame of fawn done, the inevitable greyish Purcell makes its money from. So when something singular comes along, it is a miracle. Hail tap dances down the tarmac, skittering in its silver shoes. The baby did not look like my father at all, but there was a resemblance, our slight awkwardness with each other. Neither of us was at our best that first night. There was the puff of the pump compressing my legs. I was giddy from the intravenous morphine. My catheter wept. And I was amazed, after watching so much arid dialysis, by the heavy saddlebags of urine beside the bed. And then there was our mutual Englishness. We tried to ignore the UV lighting coming under the curtain and the hissing mother of the jaundiced twins. I couldn't reach the plastic crib, so you lay, all 9.5 solid pounds, in my arms, and we were both shyly pleased with each other. A little snobbish with relief and recognition that it should be you, after all. The voice you already knew, the limbs I had already felt. Weep at the start of the journey, before boarding even begins. Weep whortleberry tears, brighter than the eyes of swallows, deeper than ponds on your father's clean yard. If you do not weep now, you may never weep, because when you return, there will only be a cubicle and the nectarines on the hospital windowsill. So weeping would be for a penumbra of sentiment, the itch of a lost quotation in a book you cannot find.